Hey folks, Cupatham here. In today's awesome tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make this incredible print-in-place hinge. We're going to learn about knuckles, we're going to learn about leaves, we're going to learn about tolerances and bridging faces to create awesome movable hinges. How awesome is this? It's going to really open the world of what you can do with 3D printing and creating your own objects and boxes and designs and chests and all sorts of cool stuff. I look forward to seeing what you make. But without further ado, let's dive right into the tutorial. All right, folks, you know what to do. Let's fire up Blender, say hello to our old friend, the default cube, before swiftly hitting X and saying goodbye to the default cube. Next, I want you to add in a cylinder. Now, when we think of, so you can go Shift A, Mesh, Add Cylinder. Perfect. And then down in this menu here, I am going to increase the vertices, so the amount of points around the edges, which creates these faces, from 32 to 128. So it makes it look pretty smooth. As this is going to be the pin and the knuckles of our hinge, essentially, we want it to be smooth so there's not really any friction. You could use less vertices to create a bit of friction if you wanted a stiffer hinge, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to have quite a loose hinge so you can see how that works. And next, I am going to rotate this 90 degrees on the X-axis. There we go. Now, when we think of our hinge, what is a hinge? We basically have two flaps and then a bunch of interlocking, what are called knuckles. I realized this when I started researching hinges for this tutorial. A bunch of interlocking knuckles and then a pin that goes through them to attach it. So what we're going to do is create a print-in-place hinge where we have some knuckles and the pin will be attached because through the power of 3D printing, because it prints layer by layer, we can actually have the pin already part of the model and it'll just be built in there. So when we take it off the print bed, it will be an interior pin that works perfectly. Now, if that is confusing, don't worry, I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that right now. So let's start by creating the pin and knuckles for the inside of the hinge. And we can do this with three parts, basically. So once we have this here looking good, what we can do is basically hit D to duplicate this and then leave it right where it is. And let's call this one inner knuckle. There we go. I can spell. Perfect. And we'll call this one outer knuckles. Ooh, okay. So if I grab outer knuckles, what I'm going to do is go to the modifiers panel here, and we're going to use our first modifier of the session, one you've seen many, many times. That is the mirror modifier. Now you'll see here, because they're right on top of each other, it creates this kind of weird pattern. But if I go into edit mode and I make sure that it's mirrored on the Z axis, not the X, and I grab this along the Y, there we go. You can see that it mirrors across. Cool. So what I'm going to do is just bring this out a little bit further, maybe like here. That looks good to me. And then I am going to apply, go hit tab to go back into object mode, and then apply that. And now you'll see that we basically have three knuckles of our hinge. Now, if you imagined a flap on this side and like a flap on this side, that is essentially a hinge, right? But without any of the moving parts. So how do we make that work? Well, what we can do is if we grab this, go into edit mode, our outer knuckles, hit 3 to go into face select mode. Let's grab this face, and we can create an interior pin that is attached to both of these parts. And we can do that by hitting I to inset faces, and we'll bring this down like, I'll say to about here. That looks good. And then what I can do is I can right click, and if you go to this little tool here that says bridge faces, boom, it attaches all of that geometry nice and neatly for us between those two faces. Bridge faces is a really, really cool, powerful tool, a really powerful tool. Now, at the moment, if I hit /, this is what we have, which is basically the central pin, but it's running through this, but unfortunately there is no gap in this middle thing for it to, the inner knuckle for it to run through. Like if I look at this, you'll see it's still a solid object. Now, two ways we could approach this. We could use a Boolean modifier that we've used a million times. So if I was to go generate Boolean and have difference selected and do the outer knuckle, now if I look at that solo, it's drilled a hole through it. However, this would be much too tight a fit for what we're looking for. So that's not going to be the perfect solution for this one. What we're going to do is, if I delete that Boolean modifier, what I'm going to do is make it a little bit simpler and do pretty much the opposite of what we just did on this. If I go into edit mode, if I go 3 and get these two outside faces, I am going to inset the face and then bring it to a little bit above, like just like this. We need to work on the tolerances for our 3D printer. And just as a note, this is the part that you'll want to adjust if your hinge isn't hinging well enough. If there's too much friction, you can just expand this a little bit and you should be able to figure that out of what you need, because it's going to be very dependent on your printer. But leaving like a little bit of a gap here, you know, kind of eyeball it for the moment. You could also, you know, if you want, you could scale it out a little bit, not on the X, sorry, not on the Y. Scale it out a little bit if you want it to be a little bit wider and play it safer. But I think, judging from doing this before, around there should be fine. Now that I have that selected, if I isolate this, I have those two faces selected. I can use that same tool, right click, bridge faces, boom. Same thing, but this time it creates an inner hole for us. And now, if I come out of isolation mode, which is /, now we have a bit that can spin in the middle. And if I was to print this, you know, like this, which is cool, we can print this all together. And it basically has this part that's kind of trapped between these two things, the power of 3D printing and printing layer by layer. Now, the last little thing for this inner knuckle hinge, I'm going to hold Shift and Alt, grab all those edges, and then I am going, actually, I don't even need to do that. Go into object mode. I'm just going to scale this on the Y, and I'm going to bring it up to about here. So we have the same kind of gap on either side. And as you can see, we've got the inner workings of our hinge starting to come together. Next step is to add the outer bits, which are known as the leaves, which I discovered from researching this hinge tutorial. So let's create the leaves right now on either side of this hinge. Okay, creating the leaves. Let's start by hitting 7 to put this in top orthographic view, just so we can see it right by the side. And then I'm going to hit Shift A, and we're going to bring in a cube. There he is. Now I'm going to scale this on the Z. Scale this on the Y. There you go. Until it is pretty much exactly the same length as our model. And then I'm also going to grab this on the X, and I'm going to bring him out until he is basically touching the side of our model. Look at that. Great. So I can actually then, if I look at that, yeah, basically kind of want him having a flat edge there. Cool. Then I am going to grab this face here, and I am going to grab him on the Z, and I'm going to bring him down to about here. That looks good to me. And then I am going to, on this side here, so you can see basically making the leaf of our hinge. And if the hinge was laid flat, I would want it, you know, if it was laid down, I would want that flat edge to kind of all sit on neatly on the ground, which right now it looks like it would. Great. Then what I want to do to this leaf is attach this to the two outside parts, because when we create another leaf on the other side, we're going to attach it just to the interior part, and that's how it's going to be able to move independently like an awesome hinge. Cool. All right. So let's bring this out. I'm just going to grab this on the X-axis, just bring it out a little bit further. I want to bring it to about there, just so we've got a good amount on there. Cool. And then let's add in a couple of loop cuts. Oops, doesn't really matter where they are. And go into the top view, Alt and Shift to grab all of that. And let's grab that on the Y. And let's bring it all the way to the bottom here, to just inside here of that hinge. Cool. And then same for this, Alt, Shift, go into the top here, and then again, grab it on the Y, bring it up just inside here. Now, I've just noticed that from top view, it looks like it is. Oh, no, it's not. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's fine. That is great. Okay, perfect. That is looking good. Okay, now what we need to do is duplicate this on the z-axis and just bring it up to about here. Actually, bring it up to about there. Let's rotate this on the y-axis, 90 degrees. Cool. Grab it on the y, grab it on the x. Basically, what I'm going to do is put it in the same place, but at the top. So using the grid, grab it, z, bring it up to about there. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm just using the grid to kind of map out where it should be. I think I can push it a little bit further there, just so it's cat a corner here. The reason I'm doing it like this and not flat is because this, when I print it, it's going to print facing up like this. And this will give us better bed adhesion. If it was open, it could, flop side to side, but you could build it like that. But building it like this just gives it a bit more friction, and it's going to have less chance of failing when we print it. And for just a little bit of extra work, it's totally worth doing. Okay, cool. So now that we have those in place, let's start with this one. And what we're going to do is essentially attach it to those two outer pins. And how do we do that? Well, we can grab this face and this face. We can extrude them out until they just touch the model, like so. Then 2 to go into edge select mode. Grab that edge and that edge. Whoop. Hold shift, grab that edge and that edge. And then we just grab that on the X. And again, move it across until it's just sunk into the model. I think about there. Okay, cool. Yeah, looking great. Now, if I grab this model and this model, what I can do is, grab that model. And if I go generate Boolean union and I attach this, now we have one side of our hinge done. So if I select that and isolate it, you can see that we have quite a complex shape. We have the hinge, we have the leaf, and we have the pin all attached together. Perfect. All we have to do is add some holes into this and it's basically done. So let's do the same to the other side. With this selected, now we do have to, because we duplicated it, we do have to move these in a little bit. So if I grab all of that by hitting Shift and A, and if I hold Shift and Alt, and then Shift and Alt, grab all of that. And if we scale those on the Y, bring them in so they're just inside this pin. In fact, if I hit X to get a proper view here, so scale on the Y, bring it so it's just in a little bit. Lovely stuff. And then same vibe for this. We hit 3, we grab that face, we extrude it down, change your view if you need to until it's just touching in the model. Perfect. Then 2, grab this edge, and then grab that on the Z until it's just sunk into the model like so. And there you go. That's going to attach it to that inner pin so they can all spin independently. Very cool. So if we now grab that, and we go add modifier, do another Boolean, a union, and grab this. Now, if I isolate that, we have our inner knuckle with our leaf attached. And there you go. That's your hinge. We've hinged it, guys. That's awesome. Okay, cool. Last thing to do is to add a little bit more of dynamic design to this and add a few pins in here. And we're pretty much good to go. Now, I will say, because we're going to add more Booleans, it can get a little bit more complex. So sometimes it is worth applying these Booleans, but we will see how we go. And you can see here that there's like a little bit of you can see the like gray shading and stuff. That is because we have a Boolean object and the object we've Booleaned on there. So if we double click here, it grabs that outer part, just called cube. We can hide that, and then the other cube, and hide that because we've Booleaned them into the object, so we don't need to see those anymore. All right, let's add some pins to this real quick. Maybe add a little bit of dynamism and a little bit of extra touches to the hinge. and then we can print this and see how it's looking. All right, a little bit of design, and then we're good to go. Okay, finishing touches. Let's add some pins into this and add in a little bit of extra geometry just to make the hinge look a bit more interesting. So what I'm actually going to do is bring those cubes back, hide the inner and outer knuckle. So I'm just working with the sort of old shapes here. And then I am going to, with both of those selected, I'm going to hit Control and A and reapply our rotation and scale. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to inset some faces. And if you don't apply the scale, sometimes they can inset a little bit weird. But I'm going to bring this in. Actually, let's do it all together so we get a uniform look. So if I just inset the faces, cool. And if I extrude, hopefully they'll, oh, nah, I have to do that independently. Cool. And then if I grab those faces here, and I'm going to just extrude them down a little bit and then scale them in, just to add a little bit of extra interest to our hinge shape. Cool. Same for this guy. Extrude in by hitting E and then scale just to add, yeah, you know, just a little bit more visual interest. Let me scale that a little bit more just so it matches the other one. Looks good. Actually, too much. Too much. Scale a tiny bit more. Boom. You know, be as fiddly with this as you like. Cool. I am then going to add a loop cut here and a loop cut here. Cool. I think that looks good. And then I'm going to grab that edge, and that edge. And I am going to grab that on the Z and just bring this up like that. Cool. That looks cool. And we've got kind of an interesting, almost fantasy hinge thing going on. And let's do that on the other side too. So edge select 2, grab that edge, and that edge. And, you know, you can add however you want to style your hinge out here. But I'm going to grab those on the X to that point here using the grid again as my references. That looks pretty neat. And then, yeah, now we just add in some pins. So we can do that by Shift A, Mesh, Cylinder. There's our cylinder. We don't need so many vertices on here. Let's do 64 is fine. Probably 32 is fine. And then let's grab this on the X, bring them in here, bring them down. And this is basically for our screws to go, right? So scale this on the Z, grab this on the Z, just bring it down so it's sunk in like so. And let's duplicate this on the Y. Oops. Was that my guy? Okay. Duplicated it on the Y. Let's grab him. There you go. Move him along. Let's duplicate him on the Y again. Move him along. And then let's just get these pins in a good place. So I'm going to grab on the X. And yeah, I'm just going to place these pins where I think they're going to look great. Grab it on, I'll just do it quickly. If you wanted these to be exact, you could use the mirror modifier again. But then again, all we need to do here is generate Boolean. Actually, before we do that, whoop, let's grab these pins and right click and join to make them all the same object. That way we don't have to add 3 different Booleans. Now when we go add modifier, generate, Boolean, difference, grab these pins, boom. Now when we hide them, look at that, beautiful pinholes in there. Great. So let's grab these, duplicate them on the Z, whoop, rotate them 90 degrees on the Y. Not quite. So let's rotate that 180 degrees on the Y, get them the right way up. Lovely. Grab on the X and then bring them through the other one. Let's see, looking good. They're in the right positions. Can bring them down just a little bit, but otherwise looking perfect. And then same vibe. Let's generate Boolean difference with these cylinders. And there you go. They cut a hole right through. So if we hide those, all looking good. Now, if we have a look, if we hide the cube, boop, boop, and we bring in our inner knuckle and our outer knuckle. Now we have our hinge looking good. And the next step is basically putting this onto our print bed, and printing it upright so it will print layer by layer with that central core print in place, no supports needed, and we're good to go. Congratulations, folks. You have made a print in place hinge. How awesome is that? Because the amount of things you can do now, you know how to do this. You can add this to so many models. It opens up so many possibilities. And as you can see, you know, you can kind of just, I 100% just eyeballed this, but you know, when you get used to that, yeah, the possibilities are endless. So let's get this on the print bread again. Let's get this on the print bed and see how it turns out. Awesome. All right, folks, let's grab the inner and outer parts. We want to make sure that we have both selected, and then we're going to go File, Export, STL, save this as, I'm going to save this as just simple hinge tutorial STL, include selection only, and make sure apply modifiers is on, and then export STL. All right, boom, done. Now what we can do is if we open our slicer of choice, I use Bamboo Studio as we are aware, and then we can import this in to our print software. Now, as you can see, it will probably import in very small. In fact, you know, let's just walk it right. I'll walk you right through that. So if I go to my file selector, okay. Some editing will be needed here. Blender, projects. If I drag that into my scene, you'll see here that I have my hinge, but he's very small. So what I can do is first thing I'm going to do is orient it differently. If it printed like this, the inner hinge wouldn't work as well because it's going to print layer by layer, and that central core isn't going to be perfectly circular, and it's going to have a bit of friction, and it could also snap. So what we can do is rotate our model, boom, on the Y by 90 degrees, because we want it to print like this. This way, that central core, as we work up our model, will print way nicer. I'm also going to increase the size here to whatever I want. I'm just going to make it like 5 centimeters long. I think that'll be perfect. Look at that, looking good. And then the last thing is just to adjust it here. I'm going to bring it down just to make sure all my edges are flat on the bottom. Perfect. And then in these settings, I'm going to make sure the brim type is set to outer brim. The rest is just standard print settings. I'll print this in green, or actually I'll print this in gold. Looking good. Now, if I slice this, we can see how this is going to print. If I move this down, you'll see that it's going to print all the way up, and it's going to hit that first leaf, leave a little gap, and then it's going to print this inner core. It's going to print the core attached to the top and bottom. So this top and bottom knuckle. See, you can see if you can see that. And then, so this part with a core is running through, and this part with the other knuckle that the core is running through, it's all print in place together, which is really, really awesome. So yeah, that's it. Then we're just going to hit print. We're going to come back. We're going to see how this looks. But that's it, folks. Print in place hinges done the easy way. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks, folks. And there you have it, folks, a print in place hinge that you have designed yourself. Look at this. It's incredible, and it's going to open up so many possibilities for your designs. Imagine all of the cool boxes and mechanisms and awesome things you can do now that you know how to make your own hinges quickly and effectively. I can't wait to see what you folks make. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you have enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. Check out my Patreon. I'm going to be doing a Discord soon because people are asking for it, and I think it's a good idea. If you have any questions, please always reach out. I appreciate all of your watching time. I hope you've learned something. I've been Copper Thumb. You've been awesome. See you in the next one.